Listen closely, my children, to a story that will chill your bones and teach your hearts. This tale is not mine alone to tell, for it belongs to the spirits of Egu Road and to one young woman who lived to warn us all. It was a bright Friday morning at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. 7 friends stood beside a white minibus, their laughter rising like smoke into the clear sky. They were final-year students, almost done with their studies, and today they were traveling to Lagos for their coursemate's wedding. It would be their last adventure together before graduation scattered them like seeds in the wind. Kunal was their leader, tall and confident with a smile that could charm the sun itself. Beside him stood Ngozi, quiet and gentle, always carrying her small Bible. There was Amara with her sharp tongue and sharper mind, Chitty the jokester who made everyone laugh, Tun the reckless one who feared nothing, and Ife and Rita, the couple who finished each other's sentences. They packed their bags, their hearts light with joy. The bus driver checked his engine. Everything seemed perfect. But perfection, my children, is often just a mask that hides what is coming. As the driver turned the key and the engine roared to life, Ngozi placed her hand gently on Kunal's shoulder. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of something ancient. "Let's pray before we go," she said, her eyes serious. Kunal turned to her and laughed, his white teeth flashing in the sunlight. "A beg, Ngozi, not every road needs a prayer. Just vibes." He raised his phone and turned up the music until it shook the windows. The others joined his laughter. Chitty shouted, "Ngozi, this is not church service, oh. We are going to enjoy ourselves." Even Amara, who usually sided with Ngozi on spiritual matters, shook her head and smiled. "My sister, God knows our hearts already. We don't need to delay." Ngozi's lips moved silently as if she were praying alone. She clutched the silver cross around her neck and sat down quietly in the back seat. The driver glanced at her through the mirror, but he said nothing. The bus pulled out of the campus gate, music blaring, voices singing, and nobody noticed how the sky behind them darkened just a little, as if something had turned its attention their way. For the first hour, the journey was beautiful. They passed through bustling markets where women balanced baskets on their heads and children chased chickens between the stalls. They sang along to Afrobeat songs, teased each other about their exam scores, and argued playfully about who would catch the bride's bouquet. "Rita will catch it, obviously," Chitty said, nudging his friend. "She already has Ife wrapped around her finger." Ife grinned. "Better to be wrapped than lost, my brother." Everyone laughed except Ngozi. She stared out the window, watching the landscape change from busy towns to quiet farmlands. The road stretched ahead like a gray ribbon, and soon they turned onto a narrower route. "This is a shortcut," the driver announced. "We will save 2 hours." Amara frowned. "Shortcut through where?" "Through Egu Road," he said casually. The name hung in the air like smoke. Amara's eyes widened. "Egu Road? The forest road? I've heard stories about that place." Kunal waved his hand dismissively. "Stories are for children. We are university graduates, not villagers afraid of shadows." But Ngozi shivered despite the heat and held her Bible tighter. They stopped at a small fuel station at the edge of the forest. The building was old, with rusted roofing and faded paint. An elderly woman sat beneath a tree, selling oranges and bananas arranged on a worn wooden tray. Kunal stepped out to stretch his legs and walked over to her. "Mama, how much for your bananas?" She looked up at him with cloudy eyes. 50 naira for 3. He pulled out a 100 naira note and dropped it carelessly on her tray, taking 6 bananas without counting. "Keep the change, Mama. You need it more than I do." The old woman did not smile. She stared at him, then at the bus, then back at him. Her voice came low and rough. "Are you going through the forest?" "Yes, Mama. We are brave people." "Then do not mock what you do not understand," she said slowly. "The forest has eyes. The road has memory. Do not disturb what is sleeping." Kunal laughed loudly. "Mama, thank you for the warning, but we will be fine." As the bus pulled away, the old woman stood and raised one wrinkled hand, muttering words none of them could hear. Ngozi watched through the rear window and saw the woman's lips moving like a curse or a prayer. The forest swallowed them whole. One moment they were driving past open fields, and the next, towering trees closed in on both sides of the road. The sunlight barely reached the ground here. Shadows danced between the trunks, and the air grew cooler, heavier. Tund whistled. "This place is creepy." "Creepy is your face," Chitty shot back, but his joke fell flat. Nobody laughed. The music suddenly cut off. The radio hissed and crackled with static. Then, faintly, beneath the noise, came a sound like chanting. It was rhythmic, rising and falling, in a language none of them recognized. "Driver, fix the radio," Connell said, his voice sharper than before. "I am trying, sir. I don't know what is happening." Amara leaned forward. "Just turn it off." The driver pressed the button, but the chanting continued. It seemed to come from everywhere, from the trees, from the road itself. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Silence filled the bus. Rita's voice trembled. "Did anyone else hear that?" "It was just interference," Connell said quickly, though his knuckles were white as he gripped the seat in front of him. Ngozi began to pray under her breath. They rounded a bend, and there it was, a shrine. It stood by the roadside, ancient and crumbling, built from dark stones and draped with red and white cloth that fluttered in the windless air. Carved wooden faces stared out from the shadows, their hollow eyes following the bus as it passed. "Look at that," Tun said, pointing. "That's some real African magic right there." "Don't point," Ngozi said sharply. "Don't look directly at it. Show respect." But Connell stared openly, even leaning closer to the window. "It's just wood and stone. People worship anything these days." The bus slowed slightly as the driver navigated a rough patch of road near the shrine. A woman stood beside it. She wore a white wrapper and white beads around her neck and wrists. Her feet were bare. She did not move, did not blink, just stood there watching them. Rita grabbed Ife's arm. "Did you see her? The woman in white?" "Yes." Chitty pulled out his phone and snapped a photo as they passed. "I'm posting this. My followers will love it." Ngozi covered her face with her hands. "You should not have done that." But it was already too late. 5 minutes later, the sky opened. Rain fell in heavy sheets, pounding the roof of the bus like drumbeats. The road turned slick and dark, and visibility dropped to almost nothing. "Slow down," Amara shouted. "I am slowing," the driver yelled back, gripping the steering wheel as the bus slid slightly. Lightning cracked across the sky, so bright it burned their eyes. In that flash of light, Ngozi saw something. The woman in white was standing in the middle of the road ahead. Her arms were raised. Her eyes glowed faintly, like embers. "Stop the bus!" Ngozi screamed. The driver slammed the brakes. The bus skidded, tires screaming, and came to a shuddering halt just meters away from where the woman had stood. But when they looked again, she was gone. "Where did she go?" Rita whispered, her voice breaking. Nobody answered. The rain hammered down. Thunder rolled like the laughter of something enormous and invisible. And deep in the forest, something howled. Connell's voice was no longer confident. "Driver, let's get out of here. Now." The driver turned the key. The engine sputtered and died. He tried again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. They were stuck. They sat in silence, listening to the rain and the distant sounds of the forest. The windows fogged with their breath. Outside, the world was gray and blurred. "We should check the engine," Tun said. "In this rain?" Amara snapped. "Are you mad? We can't just sit here forever." Connell nodded. "He's right. Driver, come. Let's check." The two men stepped out into the storm, their clothes instantly soaked. They lifted the hood and stared at the engine, but neither of them truly understood what they were looking at. Everything seemed fine. No broken wires. No leaking fluids. Inside the bus, Ngozi opened her Bible and began reading Psalm 91 aloud. Her voice was steady, a small light in the growing darkness. "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." Rita joined her. Then Ife. Even Amara mumbled along, though she pretended not to. Outside, Connell slammed the hood shut. "There's nothing wrong with it. It should start." But when the driver tried again, the engine remained dead. As the rain began to ease, Chitty looked at his phone and frowned. Guys, look at this. He held up his screen. The photo he had taken of the woman in white was still there, but something was wrong. In the image, she was no longer standing beside the shrine. She was standing directly in front of the camera, staring. Night fell fast in the forest. The rain stopped, but the sky remained dark and heavy. The bus sat like a metal coffin on the muddy road, its windows fogged, its occupants huddled together. We should walk, Tun suggested. Find a village. Get help. Walk where? Amara said. We don't even know where we are. Better than sitting here waiting to die. Nobody is dying, Cunnel said firmly, though his voice had lost its usual strength. We stay in the bus. When morning comes, we figure it out. They agreed reluctantly. They ate the snacks they had brought, though nobody had much appetite. They tried to joke, but the humor felt forced. One by one, they drifted into uneasy sleep. Ngozi did not sleep. She sat upright, her Bible open on her lap, her lips moving in silent prayer. Around midnight, Chitty woke suddenly. He needed to relieve himself. Quietly, so as not to wake the others, he opened the door and stepped outside. The forest was alive with sounds. Crickets chirped. Leaves rustled. Somewhere far off, a night bird called. Chitty walked a few steps into the trees, just far enough for privacy. He finished quickly and turned to go back. That was when he heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming closer. He froze. Hello. Who's there? The footsteps stopped. Chitty ran back to the bus and climbed inside, his heart pounding. When morning came, Chitty was gone. Chitty! Chitty, where are you? Cunnel's voice echoed through the forest, desperate and raw. They had searched for an hour, calling his name, but there was no answer. What they found instead was worse than silence. Footprints. Bare feet. Leading from the bus into the forest. But they did not continue. After 20 steps, they simply stopped, as if Chitty had been lifted into the air. Rita was crying. Ife held her tightly, his own face pale. Tund kicked at the ground in frustration. Amara stood frozen, her arms wrapped around herself. Ngozi knelt beside the footprints and touched the mud. It was cold. Too cold. We need to pray, she said quietly. Pray. Cunnel exploded. Your prayers did not stop this. Chitty is gone, Ngozi. Gone. Then what do you suggest? She shot back, her voice trembling but strong. Should we panic? Should we run blindly into the forest and disappear one by one? Cunnel had no answer. Ngozi stood and faced them all. Something is here. Something angry. It took Chitty because we did not show respect. We laughed. We mocked. We took photos of sacred things. You're saying a spirit kidnapped him? Amara whispered. I am saying we are not alone. As if in response, a voice drifted through the trees. Faint. Distant. It sounded like Chitty. Help me. They ran toward the voice, crashing through the underbrush, ignoring the thorns that tore at their clothes and skin. The voice led them deeper into the forest, always just ahead, always out of reach. Chitty! We're coming! Tund shouted. The voice came again, but this time it was different. Wrong. Help me! Help me! It repeated like a broken record, the tone flat and lifeless. Ngozi grabbed Cunnel's arm. Stop. That is not Chitty. What are you talking about? We just heard him. No. We heard something pretending to be him. As if to prove her point, the voice suddenly changed. It became deeper, inhuman, mocking. Help me, come closer. Then it laughed. A sound like grinding stones. They turned and ran back to the bus, their breath ragged, their hearts pounding. When they reached the road, they stopped and stared. On the side of the bus, written in mud, were words in a language none of them could read. But beneath it, in English, someone or something had scratched. Return what you took. Tun's face went white. He reached into his pocket slowly and pulled out a small wooden carving. It was old and worn, carved in the shape of a face with hollow eyes. I found this yesterday. By the shrine. Ngozi's voice was like ice. You took something from the shrine. I didn't think it mattered. It was just lying in the mud. Just lying there. Amara's voice rose. Tund, do you understand what you've done? I'll put it back, he said desperately. I'll go right now. It is too late for that, Ngozi said quietly. She took the idol from his shaking hands and stared at it. The wood was warm, almost alive. As she held it, a thin line of red sap oozed from the carving's eyes, like tears of blood. Rita screamed. Kunnel snatched the idol and threw it as hard as he could into the forest. There. It's gone. We're done with this madness. The moment the idol left his hand, the air changed. The temperature dropped. The wind stopped. Every sound in the forest, every bird, every insect, went silent. Then the ground beneath them trembled. A crack split the road, thin at first, then widening. The bus shifted slightly, its tires sinking into the softening earth. Get in! Get in! The driver screamed. They scrambled into the bus. The driver turned the key. The engine roared to life. Go! 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 Kunnel shouted. The bus lurched forward, tires spinning in the mud. They drove fast, too fast, bouncing over the broken road. Nobody looked back. Nobody spoke. But when Amara finally glanced in the side mirror, she saw it. The woman in white. Running behind them. Keeping pace. They drove for 20 minutes before exhaustion forced them to stop. The bus pulled over near a wide clearing where the trees thinned and sunlight broke through the canopy. Ife leaned against the window, his face gray. I don't feel well. Rita touched his forehead. You're burning up. I'm fine. Just tired. But he wasn't fine. His eyes were distant, unfocused. He began to mumble in Igbo, words that tumbled out in a rush, too fast to understand. Ife, what are you saying? Rita shook him gently. Ife. His body stiffened. His eyes rolled back until only the whites showed. Foam bubbled at the corners of his mouth. He's having a seizure. Amara shouted. Lay him down. They moved him to the floor, trying to hold him still as his body convulsed. Ngozi knelt beside him, praying desperately, her hands on his chest. Then, as suddenly as it began, Ife went still. Too still. Rita pressed her ear to his chest. She listened. Listened. Then she looked up, tears streaming down her face. He's not breathing. They tried everything. Chest compressions. Mouth to mouth. Slapping his face, shouting his name. But Ife was gone. As they wept over his body, Tund noticed something and cried out. On Ife's wrist, burned into his skin, was a mark. A symbol. The same pattern that had been carved into the wooden idol. They buried Ife in the clearing, digging with their hands and broken branches, sobbing as the earth swallowed their friend. Ngozi spoke words over the grave, her voice shaking but steady. Lord, receive his soul. Forgive us for what we have brought upon ourselves. They stood in silence for a long time. Then, because they had no other choice, they kept moving. The road led them to a small village. Mud houses with thatched roofs sat scattered among palm trees. Chickens pecked in the dirt. Children stopped playing and stared as the bus rolled in. An old woman emerged from the largest house. She wore layers of beads and cloth, and her eyes were sharp and knowing. She looked at them, and something like pity crossed her face. You have traveled Egu Road, she said. It was not a question. Kunnel stepped forward. Please, Mama. We need help. Our friends are missing. One is dead. Something is following us. You disturbed the Watcher, she said simply. The Watcher. The guardian spirit of the road. It does not forgive easily. It does not forget. She pointed at Tund. You took its eye. Tund's voice cracked. I threw it away. It's gone. The old woman shook her head. Once you claim what belongs to the Watcher, it claims you in return. The idol is not just wood. It is a bond. A debt. And debts must be paid. The old woman invited them into her home. They sat on woven mats, drinking bitter herbal tea that steadied their nerves. There is a way to break the bond, she said slowly. But it requires truth. The Watcher sees all secrets. It knows what you hide in your hearts. If there is guilt, if there is sin, it will pull you down one by one. Cunnel shifted uncomfortably. We've done nothing wrong. The old woman's eyes locked onto his. Haven't you? The silence stretched. Finally, Tun spoke, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't just find the idol. I dug it up. On purpose. I thought it might be valuable. I thought I could sell it. Amara gasped. You lied to us. I'm sorry. I was stupid. I didn't think. You never think. Cunnel shouted. But the old woman raised her hand. There is more. I see it in your eyes, Cunnel. You carry something heavy. Cunnel looked away. Tell them, she commanded. He took a shaky breath. Years ago, during my second year, my friends and I went to a village for a festival. We were drunk. We vandalized an altar. Smashed it. Laughed about it. I never told anyone. Ngozi stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief and sorrow. The watcher was not drawn to the idol alone, the old woman said. It was drawn to him, to the one who mocks the sacred. It has been waiting. That night, they slept fitfully in the village, but sleep brought no peace. Dreams came, dark and twisted. Tun dreamed he was drowning in mud, hands pulling him deeper. Amara dreamed of Chitty's voice calling her name, but when she turned, his face was hollow and empty. Rita dreamed of Ife standing at the edge of the grave they had dug, pointing at her, whispering, You're next. Ngozi did not dream. She stayed awake, her Bible open, her lips moving in constant prayer. Cunnel dreamed of the shrine. In his dream, he stood before it, and the woman in white approached him. She leaned close, her breath cold, and whispered, You cannot run from what you are. He woke with a start, drenched in sweat. The others were awake too, staring at him. We all had the same dream, Amara said quietly. The woman. The shrine. The voice. Tun's hands were shaking. We're going to die, aren't we? Ngozi stood. Not if we do what must be done. We return to the shrine. We return the idol. And we ask for forgiveness. The idol is gone, Cunnel said weakly. No, the old woman said from the doorway. She held out her hand. In her palm was the wooden carving, whole and unmarked. The watcher returns what it once returned. It is waiting for you. They left at dawn. The old woman did not come with them, but she gave Ngozi a small pouch of herbs and instructions. When you reach the shrine, kneel. All of you. Speak your truth. Hold nothing back. Only then will the watcher decide if you are worthy of mercy. The journey back was long and silent. The forest seemed darker now, the trees closer together. Eyes watched from the shadows, though nothing revealed itself. When they reached the shrine, it looked different. The red cloth had multiplied, hanging from every branch. Fresh palm fronds lay at the base. And carved into the stone was a single word in English. Kneel. They stood frozen, staring at it. We should do what it says, Rita whispered. No, Cunnel said. We don't bow to spirits. We are not slaves. You are a fool, Amara said, her voice trembling with rage. Your pride has killed our friends. Your pride is killing us. I didn't. Kneel, Cunnel. Ngozi's voice was calm but firm. Or die standing. One by one, they knelt. Tun first, then Rita, then Amara. Cunnel stood alone, fists clenched, jaw tight. Then, slowly, he lowered himself to the ground. The moment his knees touched the earth, the wind picked up. The trees swayed. And the woman in white stepped out from behind the shrine. She was more solid now, more real. Her eyes were black as midnight. She walked toward them, her bare feet making no sound. When she spoke, her voice was like wind through bones. You have come. But have you understood? Tund was the first to confess. His voice broke as he spoke. I took what was not mine. I was greedy. I am sorry. The woman tilted her head, considering. Then she nodded. A mark appeared on Tun's forehead, glowing faintly, before fading. He gasped and collapsed, unconscious but breathing. Rita spoke next. I filmed you. I did not respect your presence. Forgive me. Another nod. Another mark. She too collapsed. Amara confessed her silence. I knew this was wrong. I felt it. But I said nothing. I followed instead of leading. Forgive me. The mark appeared. She fell. Now only Kunnel and Gozi remained kneeling. The woman turned to Kunnel. Your turn. But Kunnel's pride still held him. His jaw trembled. His hands shook. But he could not speak. Kunnel, Gozi whispered urgently. Please. The woman's eyes darkened. You were given time. You were given warnings. Yet you mocked. You laughed. You desecrated what was holy. You led your friends to ruin. I didn't mean. Intention is nothing. Action is everything. The ground beneath Kunnel began to crack. Say it. Gozi screamed. Say you're sorry. Say you were wrong. But pride is a prison. And Kunnel could not escape. The woman raised her hand. And the earth opened. Kunnel's scream tore through the forest as he fell. Not into the ground, but into something deeper, darker, a place where light did not reach. His hands clawed at the edges, but there was nothing to hold. Gozi lunged forward, grabbing his wrist. Hold on. Let me go, he gasped. It's pulling me. No. I won't lose you too. But the force was too strong. Slowly, inch by inch, he was dragged down. Tears streamed down Gozi's face as she prayed, her voice rising above the roar of wind and shadow. Forgive him, Lord. Forgive his pride. He is just a man, a broken man. Have mercy. The woman in white watched silently. And then, something changed. The pull lessened. Kunnel's descent slowed. Say it, Gozi whispered. Please, Kunnel. Say it. Finally, with his last breath of strength, Kunnel spoke. His voice was small, broken, stripped of all arrogance. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Forgive me. The woman closed her eyes. The wind stopped. The ground sealed itself. Kunnel lay on the dirt, gasping, sobbing. On his forehead, the mark appeared, glowing bright, then fading. The woman turned to Ngozi. You alone showed respect from the beginning. You will carry their story. Tell the world what happens to those who forget the sacred. Ngozi nodded, tears falling. The woman touched her forehead gently. Go. You are free. And then she was gone, like smoke dissolving into air. When they woke, the forest was different. The oppressive weight was gone. Birds sang. Sunlight filtered through the leaves in golden beams. Tund, Rita, Amara, and Kunnel were all alive, though weak and disoriented. They said nothing as they climbed back into the bus. This time, the engine started on the first try. They drove in silence, each lost in their own thoughts, their own guilt, their own gratitude. When they finally emerged from the forest onto the main road, they pulled over and wept. They wept for Chidi. They wept for Ife. They wept for their own foolishness. Ngozi held each of them as they cried. We were given a second chance, she said softly. Let us not waste it. They nodded, too exhausted for words. As the bus rolled toward the city, Ngozi looked back one last time at the forest. Standing at the edge of the trees, barely visible in the shadows, was the woman in white. Watching. Always watching. They did not go to the wedding. How could they? 2 of their friends were gone, and they themselves were hollowed out, changed in ways they did not yet understand. Instead, they went to their families. They told the authorities that there had been an accident, that Chidi and Ife had wandered into the forest and never returned. Search parties were sent, but nothing was found. The official report listed them as missing. Presumed dead. Only the 5 survivors knew the truth. Kunnel withdrew from everyone. He stopped attending classes, stopped answering calls. His once bright confidence was gone, replaced by a quiet, haunted look. When people asked what happened, he said nothing. Tun sold everything he owned and gave the money to charity. He joined a church and spent his days in prayer and service, trying to atone for his greed. Rita left the university and moved to another city. She could not bear to be in places that reminded her of Ife. Amara became an activist, speaking out about the importance of respecting cultural traditions and sacred spaces. She wrote articles, gave talks, and slowly found purpose in the pain. Ngozi. She became a teacher, a guide. She traveled to schools and churches, telling the story of Egu Road, warning young people not to mock what they did not understand. 1 year later, Ngozi returned to the village where the old prophetess lived. She brought gifts, cloth, food, money. She knelt before the old woman and thanked her. "You saved us," Ngozi said. The old woman shook her head. "I only showed you the path. You walked it yourselves." They sat together, drinking tea, and the old woman asked, "Have you forgiven him, Colonel?" Ngozi was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. "Yes." He was proud, but he was also afraid. We all were. He just hid it better. "And have you forgiven yourself?" That question struck deeper. Ngozi looked down at her hands. "I should have insisted. I should have prayed out loud, refused to move until they listened. You did what you could. The rest was their choice. But 2 of them died because of those choices." "Yes," the old woman said gently. "And that is why you must keep telling the story, so that others do not make the same mistake." Ngozi nodded slowly. "I will, for as long as I live." The old woman smiled. Then they did not die in vain. As Ngozi left the village, she felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. She looked up at the sky, clear and blue, and whispered a prayer of thanks. Behind her, unseen, the woman in white stood at the edge of the forest, nodding in approval. Years passed. The story of Egu Road spread. It was told in churches, in schools, in homes where parents warned their children to respect the unseen world. Some believed it. Some dismissed it as superstition. But those who had lived through something similar, those who had felt the touch of the sacred, they believed. Kunal eventually found peace. He became a pastor, a humble one, leading a small congregation in a quiet town. He spoke often of pride, of the dangers of arrogance, of the importance of humility. He never mentioned Egu Road by name, but everyone knew. Tund married and had children. He taught them to give thanks before every journey, to pray before every meal, to show respect to elders and to the land. Amara wrote a book about indigenous spirituality and the cost of cultural erasure. It became required reading in several universities. Rita found love again, though the scar of losing Ife never fully healed. She planted a tree in his memory and visited it every year. Ngozi. She never married. Her life became her mission. She traveled from place to place, a modern-day griot, keeping the old stories alive. On the anniversary of the journey, the 5 of them met at the same spot where they had started. They stood in silence, remembering Chidi and Ife, remembering their own foolishness and the mercy they had been shown. Then, together they prayed. One evening, many years later, Ngozi was invited to speak at a university orientation. A group of students was planning a road trip for the weekend. She stood before them, her hair now streaked with gray, her eyes still sharp and kind. "Before you go," she said, "let me tell you a story." She told them about 7 friends, about laughter and pride, about a shrine and a woman in white, about the cost of disrespect and the power of humility. The students listened, some skeptical, some captivated. When she finished, one young man raised his hand. "With all due respect, Ma, isn't that just a scary story? We don't really need to pray before every trip, do we?" Ngozi smiled sadly. "That is exactly what my friend Kunal said." She let that hang in the air. Then she added, "You are free to believe what you wish. But let me leave you with this. The world is bigger than what you can see. Older. Deeper. There are forces, spirits, presences, that do not care about your degrees or your logic. They demand only one thing, respect." She looked each of them in the eye. "Always pray before a journey. Not every road is just a road." The students were silent. Some nodded. Some looked uncomfortable. But none of them laughed. As Ngozi left the hall, she glanced out the window. Rain was beginning to fall. That night, Ngozi sat alone in her small apartment. She opened her old Bible, the same one she had carried on that terrible journey, and read Psalm 91 once more. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. She thought of Chitty, whose laughter had once filled every room. She thought of Ife, who had loved Rita with his whole heart. She thought of Cunnel's pride, Tun's greed, Amara's silence, and Rita's fear. And she thought of herself, the one who had been spared to tell the tale. Outside, the rain fell harder. Thunder rumbled in the distance. She stood and walked to her window, pressing her hand against the cool glass. For just a moment, in the reflection, she saw her. The woman in white. Standing behind her. Ngozi did not turn around. She simply closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you for the lesson. I will never forget." When she opened her eyes, the reflection was gone. Only her own face stared back, older now, marked by wisdom and sorrow. She returned to her chair and wrote in her journal, as she did every night. "Today I told the story again. Some believed. Some did not. But the story lives on, and that is what matters. May those who hear it choose humility over pride. May they remember that not every road is just a road. And may they always, always pray before they go." She closed the journal and turned off the light. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean, as if the earth itself was praying. And somewhere deep in the forest, along a road called Egu, the shrine stood silent and waiting. The red cloth fluttered in the wind. The carved faces watched. And the watcher, patient and eternal, kept its vigil. For it knew that pride would return. It always did. And when it did, the road would be ready. Always ready. Always watching. Always waiting. My children, this story is not mine alone. It belongs to all who have walked roads they should not have walked, who have mocked what they should have respected, who have learned too late that some things demand reverence. Remember this. Before you travel, before you journey into the unknown, before you step onto a path you do not understand, pray. Ask for protection. Show respect. Walk with humility. Because not every road leads home. And not every road forgives. This is just one of many tales. Subscribe now, and step into a world where every story whispers a lesson and every ending leaves you thinking. Sweet stories awaiting. Thank you.